Today I'm launching a new series called Boutique Spotlight, and for my first episode I'm going to be talking about Turbine Media and all the amazing work they do with their collectible limited edition releases. So let's rock this. Hi everyone, how you doing? I'm Fuzz, and welcome to the first installment of Boutique Spotlight. It's a new series where I focus on boutique labels and distributors of physical media that have captured my interest and attention over the last few years. And today I want to tell you about a label that I really dig called Turbine Media. They're a boutique label based out of Germany, and they've been in operation since about 2004. Turbine launched during the height of the DVD boom, and initially they started out focusing on German film productions and releasing German films on physical media, but ultimately they ended up expanding their catalog to include many international titles as well. And as physical media evolved, Turbine Media evolved right there with it, shifting over to Blu-ray and eventually 4K as those formats became more prominent in the collecting community. They release a lot of genre films on both 4K and Blu-ray, which includes quite a bit of horror. They've got a lot of horror titles, but also some other genre films as well, of the sci-fi or action variety, and even some other fun genres beyond just those, right? They've got a lot of cool, quirky films that might be a little harder to categorize, right? Like Naked Lunch, David Lynch, or Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, or The Last Emperor. So they have a pretty eclectic catalog of films under their belt. Their big thing is putting out fantastic looking collectible packaging with really cool artwork, and they also deliver some very satisfying 4K presentations as well that have rich, robust audio options. The people at Turbine are themselves passionate film enthusiasts. They're big fans of genre films, and they really seem to understand the collector mindset. Presumably because they're also collectors themselves, which is not at all uncommon to find in the boutique label industry. And you can tell that they put a lot of love into the work they do at Turbine. So personally, I have become a big fan of Turbine Media in the last couple years since I first became aware of them. And as such, today I'm going to be talking about some of the great 4K editions the label has released in the last couple years. I have a nice sampling here today across some of the different types of packaging that Turbine offers, just to give you guys an idea of the kind of work they do. In addition, the good people over at Turbine were kind enough to send me review copies of a few titles, which I very much appreciate. So I'm going to share some of those with you today and give you my thoughts after having watched these titles. And I want to say a big thank you to Christoph and the good people at Turbine for sending these titles out for me to review. I really appreciate the opportunity. Now, before I get into any specific releases, I do want to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit more about Turbine, about why I've become such a big fan of this label, why I think Turbine rocks, and why I think physical media collectors should definitely be keeping an eye on this label and its output moving forward. Okay, so first off, their packaging and artwork design and layout. Like I said, that's kind of their big thing, or at least one of their big things, right? They do steelbooks, they do cool little media books like this one from No Escape here, or this one from Candyman here, Candyman media book. Yeah, they do a lot of cool media books. That's like one of their signature packaging designs is these media books. And occasionally they'll also do like a really cool box set too, like they did with the Frighteners, or I think they did a couple chunky boxes for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But they do a lot of really cool designs that I think really cater to the collector. You know, Turbine really seems to be in touch with the things that appeal to collectors the most. And they will frequently put out multiple artwork variants for the titles that they release. And this is especially true of these 4K media books. It's not uncommon for them to have like 3 or 4 different editions of the same title in that media book style, each one with different art. Now they still release standard editions as well for anyone who misses out on the media book releases, because those media book releases are very limited in quantities. They don't do it for every title, but if a title is really popular, if there seems to be enough demand for a title, it's not uncommon for them to put out a standard edition release of the same title once the limited edition units have all sold out. And here's another thing I really like about Turbine, and this is actually a pretty big one. Sometimes they have 4K releases for titles that do not have 4K releases in the US. You know, I've noticed Turbine releases, for example, a lot of Universal titles on 4K. And that actually really works out well for American collectors, right? Because Universal seems to have this nasty habit of not releasing all their newer titles on 4K at the same time they release a Blu-ray, right? A lot of times you have to wait like a year before we get a 4K release. They'll release the Blu-ray within a few months of the movie being in theaters, but you'll have to wait like anywhere from 6 months to a year for a 4K release here in the US. You know, I know that's been a big complaint among collectors with Universal, right? That Universal, like a new movie comes out that people want to see, and they'll only put out a Blu-ray. They won't initially put out a 4K. I guess they want to see how well the Blu-ray sells, but you know, a lot of collectors are onto Universal now, and we know to just kind of wait for the 4K release. But with Turbine, you don't necessarily have to wait for a 4K release in the US in order to acquire a given title for your collection on 4K. Turbine might be granted the license to release a title from Universal, and they'll end up putting out a 4K in Germany long before we ever get a 4K here in the US. And Turbine has a number of titles that are like that, including a few that I'm going to discuss here today. Another reason Turbine rocks is because of their awesome audio options. They usually have some really great audio options. They do a lot of Dolby Atmos mixes, and it often seems like they provide more audio options than you would expect. There are usually at least 2 or 3 different mixes and sometimes more, and one of them is almost always going to be Atmos, unless of course Dolby Atmos was just not an option that was realistic or practical or available for a given catalog release. Plus, sometimes they include these 3D audio mixes that I'm not even really all that up to speed on. It's called RO 3D. Are you guys familiar with that? It's like a 13.1 mix, right? And like I said, I'm not even up to speed on that particular audio format, but Turbine offers it. And, you know, I don't know anybody out there who's offering RO 3D mixes, 13.1 mixes. I mean, there may be other companies out there that do, but I've never seen that with any other company before. So Turbine is real big on providing just fantastic audio and giving you as many options for the audio as possible. I know some of you out there are really big on the audio. You're big audio fans. So if you haven't already gotten into Turbine's groove, I would highly recommend checking them out. You may really appreciate what they have to offer just from a pure audio perspective alone. Another thing that's worth mentioning about Turbine is their pricing. Their pricing is actually very, very reasonable and very competitive. It's not uncommon for them to charge like $30 for a steelbook. Well, that's certainly not expensive. That's about what you would expect to pay, if not even a little bit less than you would expect to pay for a limited edition collectible steelbook. So their pricing is very reasonable, especially when you consider the limited collectible nature of many of their editions. And speaking of limited, the other thing about Turbine is they know how to do limited editions right. And what I mean by that is they make their limited editions truly limited. In many cases, they're only releasing like 300 to 500 units per edition or per artwork variant. And once those are gone, they're gone. You're not going to get them again. They don't put them back out after that. Like I said earlier, they may release a standard edition later on if that particular title, if the limited edition units sell out quickly and there appears to be quite a demand for that title. But once those limited edition units are gone, they're gone. You know, you can't get them from Turbine again. They don't put them back out again after that. You might be able to find them on the secondary market on eBay or whatnot, but you know, once the limited editions sell out, that's it. You're not likely to be able to get those from Turbine again. The other thing Turbine does that's really cool is they have this model where they call it like a short surprise release model, right? And they've been kind of following this over the last couple years. And what that means is they will kind of just announce a title out of the blue, and then they'll have a very short pre-order window before that title is actually released. Right? So for example, when I ordered No Escape a couple years ago, it was just kind of dropped out of the blue, right? And there were 3 different artwork variants that were available at that time. And then they set the release date. I seem to remember it being like a week or 2 or maybe like 3 weeks later. As collectors, we've grown accustomed to pre-ordering titles, and then like 3 or 4 months later, the title shows up at our door, right? But that's not exactly what Turbine is doing with their short surprise releases, right? They'll just out of the blue drop a title and then set the release date for a couple weeks or like the end of the month or some kind of short time frame that's not very long after the title is initially announced. In other words, they don't make collectors wait months on end before they get their titles, right? What's cool about Turbine is if one of these short surprise releases gets announced, you go place your order and then you'll have it in your hands. You know, it could be within a month or maybe even sooner, within a few weeks, right? You get your titles a lot more quickly from Turbine when they use this model. And they've been doing this quite a bit over the last couple years. Okay, so now I want to get into some specific releases that Turbine has put out that I think really represents a good cross-section of the different types of editions they typically offer. And the first title I want to talk about is a fairly new release from them. It's actually one of their newest releases, and that is Pamela Anderson in Barb Wire, 1996 film. This was released at, I think, the end of March. And, this one kind of took me by surprise a little bit. Now, if you had told me a few months ago that I'd be singing the praises of a Pamela Anderson movie on my channel in the near future, I would have been highly skeptical of that claim. I had never even heard of this movie prior to this Turbine release, so I was completely unaware of it. I'm not really that aware of Pamela Anderson's career in general to begin with, right? I mean, I know who she is, of course. I know she was in Baywatch. I know she was with Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. But aside from that, I've never really followed her career that closely, never really cared. But it turned out to be a surprisingly enjoyable film. I just had a ton of fun with this movie, to the point where I actually now consider myself a fan of this movie. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is like some cinematic masterpiece or anything like that. I mean, it's a B movie, right? It's a cheesy 90s action B movie, so your own mileage may vary. But I thought this was just a total blast to watch. It really was perfect for an evening of light entertainment. I mean, Pamela Anderson was actually pretty badass in this movie, and it was just a much better film than I expected it to be. I mean, you can't go into a movie like this expecting Meryl Streep level acting chops, right? That's just not who Pamela Anderson is. But she does just fine for the type of film that it is. And if you don't take it too seriously, I think there's a great time to be had with this movie. You've got practical effects and stunts in this. You got real guns, real explosions. And it turns out that Pamela Anderson actually put quite a bit of effort into this role. Apparently, she was in training for months for this film because she wanted to try and do as many of her own stunts as she could. So she learned kickboxing, took training for kickboxing. She took firearms training and practiced shooting real guns at the range, getting familiar with guns. And she even learned how to ride a motorcycle for the film. In fact, I would say the making of featurette that's in this is actually quite illuminating. It's not very long. I think it's only about 15 minutes or so, but you definitely learn a little bit more about this film, things I would have never known otherwise. But I got to tell you, after having seen this movie, after having seen that little making of featurette, I have way more respect for Pamela Anderson now than I ever thought I would before. Not that I had a negative impression of her before, I just didn't really know anything about her and in fact wasn't even aware that she had made this movie. The movie itself is kind of a futuristic sci-fi action film, but not sci-fi as in space, just sci-fi as in this takes place in the future of 2017 during the Second American Civil War. right? And Pamela Anderson plays a character named Barb Wire, who is like a nightclub owner, but she's also kind of a mercenary and like I said, a total badass. The film also has appearances by Clint Howard and Udo Kier, so that's kind of a little bit of a genre film royalty right there, right? Now keep in mind this is a 4K release, and this title is not available in 4K in the US. You can only get it in 4K from Turbine. I think we have a Blu-ray release in the US, but we do not have a 4K. So if you want this bad boy on 4K, you got to get one of the two Turbine editions of this. As for the image quality, this looks awesome on 4K. The colors pop like you wouldn't believe. The practical stunts and practical effects look amazing in 4K. The aspect ratio is 1.85 to 1, so it does fill up most of your 16 by 9 screen. And it's been graded for both HDR10 and Dolby Vision. The image here has some great detail, right? Really nice looking detail. It's got some depth to it. It's got some richness to it. The colors look fantastic, and the image overall just has a lot of pop to it. And the practical effects and stunts really do look amazing on this 4K. Now, of course, I had never seen this film prior to watching this 4K, so I can't really compare it to previous home media releases. I don't even really know what its history on home media is. But I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and suggest that this is probably the best this film has ever looked. And let's talk about the packaging too, because I haven't even revealed one of the coolest things about this release. So it's a steelbook, right? You get a steelbook with a slipcover. And so let me show you the art a little bit better there. And this is one of the two variants, okay? And check out that back art. Is that cool or what? Very cool artwork. At least I thought so, right? Now, check out this steelbook. This is going to blow your mind. Look at that gorgeous steelbook. Is that beautiful or what? And then I'll show you the back here. I mean, honestly, I think this title, this release may be in contention for, at least for me, for best steelbook of the year. I know, we still, the year is still early yet, so it remains to be seen. But I got to tell you, this one, I'm really happy with this steelbook. I just think it looks amazing. And it's definitely the coolest steelbook design I think I've seen this year. So yeah, I do think it's probably in contention for one of the best steelbooks of the year. The other thing I like about this, of course, whenever there's a steelbook, I very much appreciate it when you actually get a slipcover for the steelbook. I'm a big fan of slipcovers on steelbooks. Not just because it looks nice, but also because it actually protects the steelbook from getting scratched or dinged or whatnot. Turbine put out two different artwork variants for this, this design and then this design as well. This one appears to be sold out, right? But understand that you actually get the same steelbook in both variants here, right? It's only the outer slipcover art that changes, right? But you still get that same killer steelbook in both variants, right? So I actually really appreciate that because of how much I really like this steelbook. But when I checked the other day in the space of time while I was making this video, it appears that this particular variant did sell out and that you can only get the alternate one. Personally, I actually like the art on the alternate one a little bit more than this one, although this does look cool as well, but I'm always a big fan of explosions going off in the background in the art design, right? But this whole slipcover over the steelbook trend that we're seeing more and more is rapidly becoming a preferred design attribute for me. Whenever I get a steelbook, I much prefer to have a slipcover over it like this to protect the steelbooks. All right, and then I also wanted to mention something about the special features. As I indicated earlier, there is a brief 15-minute making of documentary in this, or a little documentary featurette. And honestly, to me, that was the best special feature in this. You do get some interviews with producer Todd Moyer. It's like an 18-minute interview. Interviews with the costume designer and the visual effects supervisor. And of course, you get some trailers and stuff as well, and a couple other things. It's also worth noting that you do get the unrated version of this film on a separate Blu-ray. So this comes with both a 4K disc and a Blu-ray, but it's the Blu-ray only that has the unrated version of the film. It looks like there's only about a minute or two difference between the two versions. I have only seen the theatrical cut, the 4K cut, but I do plan to check out that unrated version at some point and see if I can spot the differences. And then also as a special feature, you also get this 4x3 retro version, which is like an open matte version, right? So yeah, some great special features. Really, overall, this is just a fantastic release. I really think Turbine knocked it out of the park with this release. They did an amazing job, and I couldn't be happier with this title. All right, next up, we have another title that has not received a 4K release in the US, at least not as of the recording of this video. I expect that we will eventually get a 4K release in the US, but it hasn't happened yet. But Turbine has got us covered, and I'm talking about Renfield on 4K. Great film. I had so much fun with this. This was also a first-time watch for me. I didn't see it in the theater or anything like that when it first came out. So my first viewing of this film was this Turbine release. And I had a blast with it. It's a great film. A lot of fun. It was billed as kind of an action splatter comedy. And I would say it definitely does get a little splatterific and over the top at times. But I had a whole lot of fun with this movie. It was thoroughly entertaining and engaging right from the beginning of the film, right? It drew me right in almost immediately. I always enjoy a good Nicolas Cage vehicle, especially when he's doing something really unhinged, right? But I think Nicolas Cage was perfect for this role. It was awesome seeing him play Count Dracula. It really was a perfect casting choice in my view. Renfield was played by Nicholas Hoult, and of course Renfield is the personal assistant to Count Dracula, and I think this film does a great job in a very amusing way of chronicling the kind of relationship that him and Dracula have, the codependent and dysfunctional, if you will, relationship between Renfield and Dracula. The movie is a perfect blend of horror, action, and comedy, all rolled together into one nice, digestible little ball. You also have a good combination of practical effects mixed with CGI, right? So it's not all CGI. There are actually quite a few practical set pieces in this film. Nicolas Cage is wearing a prosthetic through a lot of the film, and different types of prosthetics he had to wear in order to show Dracula at various stages of the healing and recovery process, to show him getting stronger slowly but surely over the course of the movie. Now, like I said, this is another one that's not available on 4K in the US. Universal only gave us a Blu-ray release here in the US. So if this is a film that you really dig, if this is one that you would like to have in your collection on 4K, and you don't want to wait for Universal to maybe or maybe not eventually release a 4K, then Turbine has got you covered here. Okay, so let's talk about the image presentation just briefly here. It really does look great. The movie was actually shot in 8K, so it's got a pretty stunning looking image. Of course, there is some CGI in there, which is going to look, which is going to bring that down a little bit, because usually most CGI can only be rendered at about 2K, or at least that's what they usually do. It's just not practical to render a lot of CGI effects at 4K. But the CGI is totally acceptable. There's really not a crazy amount of CGI. And like I said, you do have some practical stuff in there too. It's not all CGI. They do use a little bit of CGI, but it seems to work really well with the film. This is just a great looking film. I really enjoyed this. You've got some great detail here, as you would expect for a film shot in 8K. Some amazing detail and beautiful colors in this film too. What was really striking about this film to me was the use of bold primary colors in this film. It was kind of reminiscent of like early Italian horror, like Dario Argento or Mario Bava or something like that. So it really did look great. It's a stunning looking film on 4K, and Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. A few more specs about the film. The aspect ratio here is 2.39 to 1, and it has been graded for HDR10 and Dolby Vision. That is very common with Turbine. And as is also very common with Turbine, we also have a Dolby Atmos mix here in both German and English. And of course, you get both a 4K and a Blu-ray disc here. The Blu-rays are region-free. So as is usually the case for releases like this, it's not uncommon for them to include region-free Blu-rays in with their 4K releases. As for the packaging, just like with Barb Wire, this is also a steelbook, right? A limited edition steelbook with a slipcover, which I love. I love that they're doing this, that they're putting these slipcovers on these steelbooks. It makes me so happy. So, you know, you got some really nice looking art there. Look at the colors on that. And of course, here's the back, so you can check that out. Very cool looking. And let's take a look at the steelbook here, shall we? Let's see which side's which. Here we go. Renfield, there you go. Really nice looking steelbook. One of the things I like about this steelbook, and it's kind of hard to see through the camera here, but there's actually like some spot gloss used on the steelbook. Parts of it are glossy and parts of it are like a matte finish, right? So if you're looking at this, Nicolas Cage and the little bats and everything flying around, that's all kind of like a gloss, right? But the red background, it's like a matte finish, right? Very cool. Same thing with Nicholas Holt's character here. He's in glossy along with the bats being in glossy, but the green background is kind of like a matte finish. So I really appreciate those kind of details on these releases. But beautiful looking steelbook. And of course, like I said, you've got a slipcover here to protect them, which I just love. Once again, if I haven't already made that clear enough by now. So yeah, this is a great packaging. I love it when they do things like this. So yeah, and this is still available on their website, at least as of the time of this video recording. As for the special features, you do have quite a few special features here. You get, of course, your audio commentary, as you would expect. You do get some deleted scenes and extended scenes, some alternate takes. But the main thing here for me, the thing I really liked the most in terms of special features was there is kind of like a making of documentary. They're like a series of a bunch of featurettes that if you string them all together, they make up about a maybe 35, 40-minute documentary or mini documentary. The only downside to that is that each featurette is its own thing, and you have to click on it each separately. They don't have like a play all function to where you can just play the whole string of making of featurettes all in one shot. You have to keep going back to the main menu and selecting each one, which wouldn't be that big of a deal, except that the featurettes, they're really short. They're only like 5-6 minutes. I think there's one that's like 12 minutes, but most of them are pretty short. So I would have definitely appreciated it more if they'd had some kind of a play all function on that. But who knows, that for whatever reason, they weren't able to do that. It might have been the conditions that Universal placed on them in licensing this film. It might have been what Universal gave them and said, you got to use these special features and you got to present them this way. That is often the case with a lot of these boutique labels. When they're licensing films out from the major studios, the major studios often can put, you know, quite a few conditions on how they release the film. So that may very well have been the case with this one as well. But the making of featurettes are definitely worth a watch. You do learn quite a bit more about this film, and it's cool to see all the interviews with Cage and Holt and whatnot. The featurettes also cover like the splatter effects, their visual effects, and some of the stunts that they did and how they pulled it off. So there really is quite a bit of good stuff in the special features. So if you're a big fan of this film, if you like this one and it's one you wanted to own on 4K, you might want to check out Turbine's site. I've got a link to this, of course, like with all the things I'm talking about here today. I do have links in the description that will take you right to the product pages. So yeah, Renfield limited edition steelbook with a slipcover in 4K. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Just another great release from Turbine Media. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, do me a favor and please consider subscribing to the channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell as well so you can be alerted when I'm posting videos that you might be interested in. And also don't forget to like the video as well. It really does help with the channel's visibility out there on YouTube. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Okay, I still have a few more titles to talk about, but I think I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here. This video is getting very long, and I've spent way too much time raving about Barb Wire and Renfield, but that's okay. Our next release here is yet another one that has never received a 4K in the US, and that's actually the case for most of the titles I'm talking about today. Most of the titles here do not have 4K releases here in the US, at least the titles that I'm displaying, and this is no exception. I'm talking about Pearl, the Ty West film. This came out in November of last year, 2023, and no slipcover on this steelbook. It's a limited edition 4K steelbook. No slipcover, but that's okay. You just get this little J card here. But check out this steelbook. How cool is that? I'll show you the back here. Very cool looking steelbook. Now, I believe this steelbook may be sold out. I don't know if they're actually getting more copies of this in or not. I'm guessing maybe not, but I did notice they also have a standard edition 4K release of this title. So if you really want to get this title on 4K in your collection, again, Turbine has you covered, and I'll leave links in the description below. You know, I've become a pretty big fan of Ty West in recent years. Really like The Innkeepers, really like House of the Devil, really liked X. You know, Pearl, also a great film. Really enjoyed this. Watching this 4K was the first time I had seen this film. I'd been holding off on watching it for whatever, about a year now, and finally got around to it, and I really enjoyed it. A great film. What I love about Ty West is his, you know, his retro filmmaking, right? This is the second film in what will be a trilogy once Maxine is released, later this year. And X was the first one, and I really liked X. Great film. It had this kind of retro 70s vibe, kind of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe. But of course, Pearl has a completely different vibe. This is actually a prequel to X. And with Pearl, you get this kind of classic, like 1940s, 1950s Hollywood Technicolor vibe. It really does seem like they tried to kind of replicate or reproduce the Technicolor look here for this film. And it just looks awesome. The colors are so bright, so vivid, really vibrant. They just look amazing, and that's one of the best things about this film. With the HDR here, you got HDR10 and Dolby Vision, and the HDR here really makes those colors pop. It's just a stunning looking image. The aspect ratio on this is 2.39 to 1, and for audio, you do get a Dolby Atmos mix for this film. As for special features, there aren't a whole lot of special features here. There's really just a couple of featurettes of note that I think they total about 15 minutes, but they are interesting. Kind of gives you a bit of a behind-the-scenes glimpse at the making of this film. And it was interesting to hear, you know, the interview clips with Mia Goth. She is just such an amazing actress. So it was cool to see her approach to this, to hear about, you know, how she approached this film. But this is just a very cool, like retro classic Hollywood looking film, like 1940s, 1950s Hollywood. Even the film credits kind of have this retro vibe to them. You know, the style of the font and the way they lay it out. It looks just like an old 40s or 50s Hollywood movie. So if you're a big fan of this film, if you've been in the market for this film on 4K and wondering why we don't have a 4K release here in the US, yeah, you might want to check out Turbine's website. Again, I think this steelbook may be sold out, but I do have a link down below to the standard edition 4K release if you'd like to get that in your collection. So yeah, just an awesome release from Turbine. Okay, next up we have a box set from Turbine, and I actually think this next title is one of the coolest things Turbine has ever released, and that is the Frighteners 4K box set. I have talked about this title a little bit on the channel before. A couple other videos I went over this, but it's absolutely worth bringing up for this video because, like I said, I think this is one of the best releases that we have ever received from Turbine. Very cool box set. This is a 6-disc set. You get like 2 4K discs and 4 Blu-rays, multiple versions of the film. You get amazing special features with this. There's like a 4.5-hour documentary, making of documentary that Peter Jackson had his people make at the time they were making the film, and it is just very comprehensive. Everything you ever wanted to know about this film is in that documentary. And then on top of that, they also include a newer non-archival, a new 95-minute retrospective in addition. So this thing is just stacked with bonus features, and the 4K looks amazing on this. Really nice looking 4K image. You just can't go wrong with Michael J. Fox in 4K, am I right? So let's take a look at this box set real quick here, kind of show you what's going on here. Let me compare this to a couple other releases here, just to give you an idea. So there's the box set, just to give you an idea of how big this thing actually is. There's Renfield sitting there right next to it. Look at that. I mean, this Frighteners box set is massive. So I'm going to open it up here a little bit. It kind of opens up like that. This is kind of hard to do on camera. Get my J card out of there. And then what you get in here, I got to set this down to do this. The discs have their own slip cover, right? And then they come in like a digipack set, like I don't know what you call these things, but the discs like that, right? I mean, amazing. I love this kind of packaging. The discs are all secure, no cardboard slots. They actually have trays, right? So good stuff. I love this artwork too. This artwork's very cool. I believe the cover is the original art for the film, and then this was a new art design. Let's see what else we get in here too. You do get some like art cards, which I have not taken out of this because I don't want to. You get a couple posters. You get a Frank Bannister business card, a couple posters, one with the new artwork, one with the original art. And then you do get this little book right here. Pretty big book. I don't know how many pages it is. I can't remember. Let's see if it says here somewhere. Let me see if it tells me how many pages are in the book here. It does. 196 pages in this book. Now, the only downside to these Turbine releases is that the text is in German, right? The text is going to be in German for these things. Now, personally, I don't really care about that. And here's why. I seldom read the books that come in my collectible editions. It's not my thing, really. I might flip through a few pages, check out some of the photos or whatnot, but I almost never read this stuff. So, you know, you may be the same way. I hear a lot of people are like that. So I'm not too concerned about the German text printing. And that's very common for Turbine, right? A lot of the stuff, their media books are like that too. The text is printed in German. And like I said, it's not really a big deal. I'm interested in the packaging, and I'm interested in what's on the discs themselves. So in that regard, Turbine absolutely delivers every time. Image-wise, you do get Dolby Vision and HDR10, and the aspect ratio is 2.35 to 1. But this one has a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 and 2.0 track. Now, I do want to note this release has two different artwork variants, and this particular variant is sold out, apparently, from what I understand. But you can still get the alternate variant, which has all the same stuff in it. It's just a little bit different artwork. And in fact, this is how it works. So this is, I believe, the original art for the film, and then you take the new art here. So what they do is they reverse the outer cover and the inner slip cover for the two different variants, right? So the one that's available right now, this is the art that is on the main box here, right? And then the original art is on the slip cover that's, you know, covering the discs, right? So that's really the only difference. They flip the artwork. But you can still buy this title. It is available. You have to get the alternate variant, but it is absolutely available. And it is one that I would highly recommend if you're a fan of this film. I think it's a must-own if you're a fan of this film. Again, another title that never got a 4K release in the US, and I don't know if it will, but you know, this is like the ultimate collector's edition. In fact, I think that's what it's called, the Ultimate Collector's Edition. So if you're a fan of this film, this is one I would definitely recommend picking up. Okay, next up we have a media book, and this first one is in the form of the 1992 film Tony Todd, Virginia Madsen, and I'm talking about Candyman, of course. Classic horror film, great film. And this is what their media books look like. So let's take a look at their media books. Of course, this particular edition, there were 3 different variants for these media books. I should say that up front. This has the German title, right? But you've got some other different variants as well. You know, what I like about this is their packaging on these media books is really cool looking, right? So let's take it a bit by bit here. One thing I like, if you look at this, you'll notice, if I can get the reflection right, you'll notice they use a lot of spot gloss. So the eye retina here is glossy, as you can see, but the rest of the image is like a matte finish. And if you turn it around and look on the back, same situation with the hook, although it's kind of hard to see the reflection on the hook. But the hook is all glossy, and then the surrounding background is not. It's like a matte finish. So just, it's little things like that that I think are really cool. You know, that kind of attention to detail, I think it makes all the difference. And then when we open up these media books, you've got a disc on one side, you've got a book there that's built into the packaging, and then a disc on the other side, in this case a Blu-ray and a 4K disc. Again, let's take a look. You got artwork there in the media book, very cool media books, but again, the text is in German, so you got to be okay with that. Like I said, I seldom read the actual literature in these editions. I'm more interested in what's on the disc, right? I'm more interested in the transfer, the audio options, the special features, and whatnot. But this is a very cool release. You know, they have some variants that have the English title, some with the German title. I think at least 1 or 2 of these variants is still in stock, although I'll put links down below for you guys to check out at your leisure. But I was really impressed with the restoration on this, which apparently came from Turbine. Now, there are multiple 4K releases throughout the world for this one. This is not just exclusive to Turbine. Scream Factory here in the US did a 4K release, and Arrow Video did a 4K release, but they may have used Turbine's master for that. This was actually, from what I understand, a pure Turbine master. This restoration came from Turbine, all right? And it looks incredible. The amount of detail that you see in this image is just stunning. Totally stunning. You see the textures on walls and stone and whatnot. Take, for example, that one scene where Helen's going into the bathroom, the public bathroom that is completely disgusting, right? You can see everything that's on the walls in that bathroom. I mean, there is literally, this is gross, but there's literally shit smeared on the walls, and you can see it. You can see the texture of it. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be too gross here, but that particular scene looks especially gross in 4K because of how much great detail you get and how much you can actually see. Of course, you see great detail on facial features and clothing and whatnot as well. Yeah, really just a stunning 4K restoration for this. Quick note about the specs here. The image is aspect ratio is 1.85 to 1, so you get that nice screen filling image. Of course, you do also have the HDR and Dolby Vision grading, and for audio, it's HD DTS Master Audio 5.1 and 2.0, again, in German and English. They always include both German and English for their audio options. So if you're a big fan of this film, maybe you even own one of the other versions, but you're looking for another version with alternate art, you might want to check out what Turbine has here. So yeah, awesome media book by Turbine in 4K, Candyman. Okay, and then for my last media book release, physical release that I wanted to actually show you, again, No Escape. I brought this one up on the channel several times now. I'm a huge fan of this movie. This was the title that made me a fan of Turbine. This is the title that put Turbine on my radar. It's an awesome 1994 Ray Liotta film, kind of a prison colony film. Very, very cool movie, directed by Martin Campbell. And when this first came out, there were 3 different artwork variants available for it. They all sold out within probably a few days to a week, right? I mean, it sold out quickly. People were definitely interested in this title. Of course, this is the only place you can get No Escape on 4K. It's not available on 4K in the US. And I will say, I do think this 4K release is the best I've ever seen this film look on home media. It does look great. Now this transfer is a little bit different. It was not a 4K, native 4K scan from the original camera negative. Apparently the original camera negatives were not available, so they had to use an existing 2K scan from the inner positive. But honestly, this looks amazing. Even with the upscaling, it really does look good. And like I said, it's the best I've ever seen this film look on home media, or probably ever in general. Now, as I indicated, the media books are all sold out. You can no longer get these media books, but Turbine still has you covered. They did put this title out as a standard edition 4K release, and I'll put a link in the description below. Let's talk about the image and audio for a minute. Image-wise, you've got an aspect ratio of 2.40 to 1, and you've got HDR and Dolby Vision here. But what's really interesting about this release is the audio options. Not only do you get a Dolby Atmos track, but this is one of those releases where you do get RO 3D audio 13.1 mix. They actually include that for this, and I don't know where else you would be able to find that kind of audio mix for this film other than Turbine. I mean, that is definitely one of the things that makes this particular release really unique and really valuable in my mind. This was one of those titles that had kind of a short surprise release. They just kind of announced it all of a sudden. And like I said, within a few days to a week, all of the media book variants sold out. And, you know, the quantities are, like I said before, they do limited quantities of these media books. This particular artwork variant, there were only 500 of these made. So I have one of 500 of these that exist in the world. The US artwork variant, they only made 333 copies of those. And then the German variant, they made I think 1,000 copies of those. So, you know, you had a little over 1,800 copies total spread across 3 different media book variants, and they all sold out within that first week of them being announced. And the special features on this are also really good. You get some pretty significant interviews. You get a half-hour making of documentary. It's like a standard definition archival documentary, but it's really good. You got about a 23-minute interview with director Martin Campbell. You've got almost a half-hour interview with producer Gail Ann Hurd, who's legendary in my book, and interview with the cameraman. So you do get a lot of cool special features in this that I think are definitely worth checking out. Let's take a quick look at the media book here. Again, the disc on one side. You've got, if I can do this, again, German text, but that's fine. You do get some cool images in here, though. Very cool stuff. I'll hold that up for you guys to see. See if I can find something else cool here. Yeah, so cool media book. And then on the other side, you got a couple more discs there as well. Of course, 4K and 2 Blu-ray discs. So yeah, if you're interested in this film, like I said, I will put a link in the description so you can order the standard edition, but it's an awesome 4K release, and it's one I would highly recommend if you are a fan of this film. So those are the releases, the visual aids that I wanted to share with you guys today. But I wanted to tell you about some of the other titles that have been released. I'll just kind of go through a list here. They did release their own version of American Werewolf in London on 4K. Came with 3 different artwork variants. They've released The Black Phone on 4K, the Ethan Hawke movie. That's another one. I don't believe we have a 4K here in the US unless one is coming. I'm not sure about that. But Turbine has had The Black Phone on 4K for a while now. So again, I really appreciate the fact that you can get certain titles on 4K from Turbine that you cannot get on 4K in the US. Let's see what else here. They also released their version of The Hills Have Eyes. They did a Hellraiser Blu-ray. I mentioned, I think earlier, they more recently have done Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas on 4K. They did the Cronenberg film Crash on 4K. And I mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They did a bunch of stuff with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like 5 different media book variants, and then like 2 or 3 chunky boxes on top of that. So they really went hog wild with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Another thing they released, this is kind of interesting. We're actually getting this on 4K in the US, but they put out a Blu-ray of Twister. Now, You're probably wondering, hey, Fuzz, why do I care about that if it's coming to 4K in the US? Well, this is another one of those releases where they actually included an RO3D 13.1 mix, as well as a Dolby Atmos track on the Blu-ray. So at the time, it was a new HD master, so not 4K, but the audio options you got on their version of Twister are amazing, right? And even with the new 4K release that's coming out in the US, you're not going to get RO3D 13.1 mixes on those universal 4K releases. We'll get a Dolby Atmos mix, but you're not going to get the 3D audio on that. And of course, they've released a ton of other stuff too. Those are just some examples to give you an idea of the kinds of films that they have released so far. Okay, and before we wrap things up here, I do want to give you guys a few tips for ordering from their website if you're in the US in particular, right? I'm keeping this kind of focused on those of you who are in the US. I know not everybody who watches this channel is in the US, but most of the people who watch this channel are in the US. And I realize some people may be a little bit nervous about importing titles from overseas, so I'm going to try and put some of those concerns to rest here for you. When you first go to their website is in German. So you need to either use like the Google Translate extension in your web browser, or they have an option where you can actually change the language of the site. Now, if you look here in the upper right-hand corner where you see the German flag, you click on that, and it will allow you to select the UK flag to change the site to English. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't change everything on the site to English. It changes just the main menus and most of the main like critical functions of the site, adding to the cart and whatnot. Those kinds of things are in English, right? But the listing information for individual specific releases, that's still in German when you've clicked on the English version of the website. So if you want to be able to read the descriptions of the titles, what I do is I actually go back to the German version of the website. I click on the German flag in the upper right-hand corner, and then I just go to the page I want to look at and click on the Google Translate extension button, which is in the upper right-hand corner of the address bar. For reference, I'm using a Windows PC and Mozilla Firefox as my web browser, and Google Translate does have an extension that you can download for the browser, and when you click on it, it'll translate the whole page to English for you, or whatever language you need it to translate it to. So because of the way their website is set up, I find myself toggling back and forth between switching the flags using the German version or the UK version of the website versus using Google Translate to read the listing information. But if you just play with it a little bit, you'll figure it out and it'll all make sense. The other thing I wanted to mention, this kind of a word of advice to you if you're in the US. Here in the US, we don't have to pay their VAT tax or whatever it is. They have Europe has some kind of a tax that we don't have to pay here in the US. So when you're going to order from Turbine, here's what I'd recommend doing. Before you even add anything to your cart, before you even really start browsing, if you plan on ordering from them, you want to create an account first on Turbine's website, right? Use the English version of the website in order to do that if you need to. But you want to create an account, and then you want to make sure you fill out your shipping address information so that Turbine knows where you're located, right? Because that will affect the pricing that you see for each individual item, right? Because we don't have to pay their VAT tax, the prices for those of us in the US here is going to be a little lower than for those in Europe. So before you add any items to your cart, make sure you create an account at Turbine's website and log into that account. Make sure you're logged in before you start adding items to the cart and before you start searching for items and trying to purchase them. And the prices on the website will be accurately reflected for those of us here in the US who don't have to pay the European VAT tax. Now, one last thing I'll note is that when you're ordering internationally, you do have to pay a little bit more for shipping if you're importing from Germany to the US, right? The shipping it can be a little bit pricey. I mean, it's not too bad, but I think what helps is that the base price of most of their releases is low enough to where when you add the shipping costs on top of that, it doesn't end up getting too crazy expensive. But yes, I should warn you, the shipping does add a little bit extra to your total, and you should definitely expect that if you're ordering, importing into the US. If you're in Germany, I think you get like free shipping after after you spend like 50 euros or something. But in the US, no such luck here. We do have to pay a little bit more for shipping, but again, the base price of their items is reasonable. You know, they're not charging an arm and a leg for their titles to begin with. So a few extra bucks for shipping, I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. It works fine for me. I've ordered from them a few times in the past, and I have always had a really good experience. So if any of you are a little bit nervous about importing from overseas, I can tell you Turbine is a solid company. They got good people over there. They get your releases out to you in a very timely and efficient manner. In fact, the few times I've ordered from them, I was surprised at how quickly my items arrived, right? Like I seem to remember it being less than 2 weeks to get to the US from Germany. And in one case, I think it showed up in like a week and a half, right? So the people at Turbine, they are totally on top of it, and great customer service. So yeah, I've always had a really pleasant experience ordering from them. Never had any kind of problems. So I would definitely recommend them to you guys if you're interested in these titles. Okay, so that about wraps up my first boutique spotlight video on Turbine Media. Long and short of it is, this is an awesome label that I wholeheartedly support, and I would definitely recommend checking them out if these titles and editions that I've talked about today have captured your attention as well. I have included a link to their website in the description below, as well as links to some of the individual product pages for the titles I talked about today. Let me know what you think of the video in the comments down below. Do you have any experience with Turbine Media? And if so, what are some of your favorite titles that they've put out? And if you're new to Turbine, which titles did I talk about today that sound interesting to you? I always love hearing from you guys, so make sure you leave some feedback in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, maybe even share the video if you're feeling so inclined. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.